Okay.
Just
All
want to
right.
make that clear. Yes, I am interested in the reading section.
Right then.
Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Welcome to the podcast. Could you just tell us a little bit about your career and how long you've been teaching and your experience with IELTS, please? If that's all right.
Sure. Well, I've been teaching ESL for 12 plus years now, and IELTS more recently. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've started focusing directly on IELTS. In between those times, I've been working in schools teaching Japanese as well, so it's the other language that I teach, and music. Yeah. So so then I became aware of IELTS, and it I think it's a really wonderful way of looking at all the different skills, and a good way of making sort of, for a generalized test that has to be across the board, it's
Yeah.
it's a successful one, I think.
Uh-huh. You said that in the last couple of years you've decided to focus on the IELTS. Why
Yeah.
was that?
Why do I focus on it? Because there's a need for it. There's a need for it, I guess. People have been saying, do you do IELTS? And the more IELTS that I teach, the more I realize that these direct skills are required just for IELTS, because it's about passing a test. It's not about, it's about improving your English as well, but it's also about passing a test. It's like your VCE at school, I think. You learn all these skills that you have to learn, and you build up to a point, and then you get to your VCE, and this VCE is all about passing your VCE the highest level you possibly can. There's a sort of thing about yes, having the skills, but yes, knowing how to show that you've got those skills. So it's so focusing on IELTS is basically teaching people how to show that you have the skills as well as having the skills themselves. There's a little sort of sharing of knowledge there, you know.
One thing is having the English ability, but you've got to apply it in a certain way. And you've got
That's
to
right.
learn how to do these 250-word essays in 40 minutes. And
Right, and where in life apart from IELTS do you need that?
exactly.
So it's so I'm thinking it's a skill that you need to have to pass your IELTS in order
Exactly.
to achieve what you need to achieve, and these are
Yeah.
the ways that we can do it.
And you said that you really wanted to discuss the reading because you feel that it's been overlooked.
Yeah, I don't know what lots of teachers do. I'm not aware what lots of teachers do, but I know that it can be very easy to say, let's skim and scan, and not actually explain what it is or how to do it. So I don't want to take away from other teachers. I think they're probably very capable, and I don't wish to be anything other than another one of those many teachers.
Okay.
Just
All
want
right.
to make that clear. Yes, I am interested in the reading section.
Right then. Now, if a student came to you, well, I was reading on your website earlier that you've got quite a lot of thank yous there for the students regarding the reading. How did you approach teaching that?
When I teach reading, of course, it depends on what each person needs, but I think it is about finding out what it is that you're reading for. So reading for purpose. Most of the times when you're reading for enjoyment, or you're reading for information. For the IELTS, you're doing none of these things. You're reading because you need to answer questions. When I say reading for information, I mean learning about the subject content which you're reading. You don't care really about the life cycle of a butterfly or whatever. That doesn't interest you. What you care about is whether you can get information and answer questions correctly from that reading. So it's all about reading for purpose. So I think the first thing that I sort of try and help my students to understand is that it doesn't matter what the content of it is, as much as getting the answers that you need from the content, if
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yes.
And so reading for purpose.
Right then.
That's the first thing I would sort of try and get across.
How can a student change how they read? Because if they're reading, are they going to go there more focused? Are they going to be quicker? How are they going to change their reading style to adapt for the test?
Right. Well, this is where skimming and scanning comes in, because when you read for pleasure or you read to learn, what you're doing is you read line by line, you read word by word, and you take in the information slowly at a pace that is comfortable for you. In IELTS, of course, the time is your enemy. You have an hour to read loads and answer lots of questions. So it's about first of all, depending on the kind of question that you have, skimming for information and scanning for information, they're two completely different skills, I think. So, for example, when you're given then what would I normally do in a class is we'd start doing some questions. Here's a reading test. How do we approach it? And of course, what you ultimately need to do is find what's comfortable for you. And how I would approach reading, I can give advice. This is how I might approach it. And I think the student needs to see whether that works for them. And if it doesn't, what can they take away from that and improve in their own style? I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm saying here's a method. Does it work for you? And if not, what can you take from what I've got and make it work for you to improve what you can already do? So I think that's also important. Don't do what someone else does because it's better. Do what you do because it's the best thing for you.
I see.
If that makes sense.
And then,
yeah, but either way. Yeah, then what I say to them is, for example, first of all, you need to, in order to read quickly or to skim and scan successfully, you need to predict what's in the text or what the text is about. So if you lift up a piece of paper and it has loads of writing over it, you've got no idea what it's about, then your ability to understand what's in the text is going to not be so large as if you look at the title, for example, and see what the title is. Just say it might be something about Australian sports people, it might be Australian wins gold or something like that.
Yeah.
And you look at the title and you go, right, well, this is going to be about the Olympics probably, or certainly about Australian sports. And all of a sudden your mind is beginning to work into pulling out vocabulary and knowledge that you already have in that field as far as English knowledge. I'm not talking about actual knowledge, English words and vocabulary and knowledge and that kind of thing.
I see.
Similarly, if there's a picture, to look at the picture. Pictures are so important. And you look at the picture and what can you glean from that picture? What is it about? If it's a picture of 4 people with medals on, then obviously it's going to be about success in sports. They're talking about success. So all of a sudden a whole new, set of vocabulary, things that are going to probably be in the article, you start predicting. And that's a very important skill when it comes to skimming and scanning, being able to predict what you think vocabulary-wise might be in the text.
Excellent. And a student can improve their predictive abilities by, I'm just guessing here, by 1, reading more in general and filling their head up with more information, to put it bluntly, on topics related to the IELTS. For example, there's those 8 topics: environment, crime, whatever, society. They could read more about that to get that vocabulary there. Is there any other ways we can improve our prediction abilities apart from filling their head with information?
Reading newspaper articles in general is a great way to study for IELTS, because it is in the format often, certainly of academic IELTS, it's in the format often of an academic IELTS essay, even if it's about stuff that you're interested in, even if it's not about the main topics of IELTS. What it's allowing you to do is see how articles sort of present themselves, see how words come together, see how the arc of a story sort of works one into the other. There's always some sort of flow, and to see how that works. And that's going to help when it comes to the actual skimming and scanning part, which we haven't even got to yet. But all of that sort of comes into play. So just reading newspapers, reading things that you enjoy reading in general is a great way of doing it.
I see. And what we're going to do is predict the vocabulary, predict the type of language, but on a very broad, general level. Right.
And predict what you think the article might be about. Even if you're wrong at this point, it doesn't matter, because it's reading is seen, or it's classed as a passive skill. But reading for IELTS and reading for learning and reading all that kind of stuff is a very active skill, and your brain has to be extremely active to be successful. So what you're doing is getting your brain active.
Yes, I see. And I was just thinking now, one skill would be to pick up a newspaper, look at the headline, and then just look at a picture and immediately jot down as much vocabulary related to that topic, and just compare that by reading the article afterwards and do a comparison. That would be like a good technique to just try and get this predictive skill down and under control.
That's a great idea, and also adding to the vocabulary by pulling words that you don't know out of the article and adding that to your list, and as a form of improving your vocabulary in the areas, you can add to that too. So that's good.
Okay, well that's great advice, Hannah. First stage, we've got to look at it, predict, generate, get our mind in gear, tune into this topic, and start getting in the mode, so to speak.
Yeah, I like how you said tune into the topic. That's exactly what it is. That's nice phrasing. That's good. Tune into the topic. Good.
I've just
Yeah.
copyrighted it.
Oh, okay, damn. That's great. Okay. And then stage 2, I personally think stage 2 is to read the question. Now, some people say read the article first. If that works for you, great. I personally think that you should read the questions first, and more so, even more so, if you've got a question, a general question, for example, summary completion, or what is the writer's point of view, and then you've got a specific question such as true, false, not given, or sentence completion, or something like that. I would always do the general question first and then the specific question. And the reason why is because the general question will give you an overview of the topic as you hone more and more and more into what the article's about and then when you get to specific, a lot of the time you've already actually accidentally found some of the answers throughout the rest of your question answering. So I would even order my questions the way I answer them to general first, specific second. So the first thing second stage 2, read the questions, decide which way you're going to do them, and then read the questions again and again until you've got a really good idea of what it is that they're asking. And often, particularly in the summary completion questions, they often have a lot of the vocab and a summary, an overall summary of what the article's about anyway.
Right, fantastic advice. That makes so much sense.
So general, okay, let me think. I've got general would often be summary completion, matching headings to paragraphs, identifying the writer's views. These are general, and maybe matching causes. Matching cause and effects might be either. And then the specific are things like multiple choice, selecting factors, sentence completion, short answer questions. These are specific, and true, false, not given.
And then just work through the questions, choose the general ones, get an overview, and then later jump into the specific ones.
That's how I would approach it.
Excellent advice. That would be stage 2.
That would be stage 2, is the sort of deciding, looking at the questions, and stage 2 includes so, for example, then we get to say a summary completion question, and often it'll have like A to F and different sentences that say which paragraph does this letter best respond to, that kind of question, for example.
Yeah.
Then what I would be doing is reading each summary sentence and making sure that I fully understand the summary sentence. And that's one thing that I do with my students is often we'll read a sentence together and I'll say, well, what does that sentence mean? Because it'll use all these words and they're big words, and often the key word, you'll pick up the wrong word as the key word, and so we're focusing on the wrong thing. So what does the sentence mean? And spending time finding out what the question sentence means, more so than reading and rereading the actual article, might feel like a waste of time because you're spending it on the question and not the article. But actually, I think you'll find it's a huge saving in time when it comes to finally answering it. So spending time on the question, understanding the question and exactly what it is that each thing is asking for, not glistening over the question, going, right, I need to find those things, let's go. So that time on the question is part of that stage 2, is really focusing and spending time.
Very valuable advice. That definitely. That is. I've never thought of it like that, because if you make a mistake there, you're going to go way off track once you start looking. Yep. It's like if you're in a field and if you start walking off in one direction, just a few degrees at the beginning, at the end of 50 meters, you're going to be way off target from your original destination.
That's correct. That's exactly what it's like.
I see.
So stay focused on the question, because a question is what it's about. It's not about anything else. It's about getting the right answer.
Wow.
Yeah, and keeping that in mind with the IELTS. I think there's a lot of people who don't succeed in their IELTS first time, second time, third time, and they become very sort of maybe a little bit without confidence anymore about their English. But sometimes it's not about their English. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not about their English. It's about answering the question and doing the right thing by IELTS, if that makes sense. So,
it makes complete sense. I see it so many times. Like I get emails from students, and in their email that they've just written in about 10 minutes. I'm thinking, how just from their writing ability, how did they get so low? And I think that's why a lot of academies nowadays, they'll say, okay, I can get you from a 6 to a 7 guaranteed, because it's a case of not actually teaching the English abilities, teaching the exam skills.
How to pass the test, correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then we get into skimming and scanning, and this is one of the absolute skills that you need to come away with is how to skim, how to scan, and what's the difference. And I would say the difference is skimming, you get for huge general lots of information. So skimming is what you'll do to do your general questions, and scanning is finding detailed information, and that's the difference between the two. So the first thing you're going to do in an article is skim. And the way I teach skimming, and it's effective of speed reading, it's a skill that you need to learn. It's not something that you do once or twice and go, oh, this is too hard. It's something that you actually need to practice and practice and practice in order to get successful at it. And that's, I think a lot of people go, oh, I can't do this, and then go back to their old habits.
Yeah.
But really, putting time in, it's worth it.
Right.
So skimming, I advise people to get their article that it is they want to read, and use your index finger, or any finger, but index finger is the most natural, certainly for many, and start in the top left-hand side of the corner of the page where you would normally start reading. But then instead of reading across one line, drag your finger diagonally down and across the page, depending on the bulk of the writing and also the content and how skilled you are at speed reading or skimming. That is how far down you go. So, for example, you might just cover 2 lines at once instead of just the one going across one line. That would be for beginners, very beginners. Just drag your finger across 2 lines, so down across 2 lines. So you start up in the top left-hand corner and you end up on the other side of the page, but instead of across one line, you've dropped down a line at the same time. So your finger's going down and across, and then back down and across towards the left-hand side of the page again, over and over. Like you're making a Christmas sort of tinsel on a Christmas tree. You're painting tinsel on a Christmas tree, that sort of down and across.
So we're zigzagging across, making a Z almost.
Yeah, basically, depending on the size of the Z, would depend on how quickly you can do it. So, for example, when I skim something, I can, depending on the density, I can skim up to 7 lines at once, whereas or maybe more, but depending on how dense it is, whereas some people would only skim 2 or 3 lines at once. But either way, while you're doing that, you're not trying to read every word. What you're doing is pulling out keywords, and they can be out of order. So you're just pulling out a key phrase here, a word there, just words that pull out and that jump out at you on the page. And the reason why you use your finger is because your eye follows your finger along and it finds the words. If you don't use a finger or something to do it, your eyes don't have anywhere to focus on the page. So you follow your finger with your eye, you pull out all these keywords out of order, doesn't matter because it's just skimming for general information. If you do that over one paragraph, you've pulled out all these keywords. You then, in your head, because your head is a very clever thing, it then puts it together in a kind of summary of what it is that you've read. You haven't read it, but you've pulled out all the keywords and you've pulled out everything that strikes you in that first paragraph, and that will tell you a summary of what the paragraph is probably about.
I see. Going back to stage 1, we've already generated a bank of words, and while we're skimming, while we're doing this, we're probably going to look for these words. We're already tuned into what are going to be the key words. Well.
And also by reading the questions as well.
Yes.
You're also pulling out more vocab. So by the time you get to the skimming phase, you've looked at the picture, you've read the title, you've predicted what's going to be about, you've read the questions, you already know. Your mind is doing all this for you. You don't have to stress. Your mind is guessing and thinking what this article is going to be about, trying to prepare yourself for the reading part. And then when you're skimming, you're just pulling out all the keywords and going, right, well, I think this paragraph was about, based on all the words that I've just heard, I'm guessing that this is probably going to be about whatever it is about. And I say you're going to be pretty bang on.
Right then. And you would do this for every single paragraph? You do.
Correct.
Skim the whole
stop after
article.
each paragraph.
Right.
I'd stop after each paragraph, particularly if you're doing things like summary completion or matching headings to paragraphs and all that kind of stuff. These are the general questions, but skimming is for general knowledge only. Okay, we're not looking at specific information yet.
If a student is studying on their own and they're just hearing this, is there a way they can practice and test if you've learned this ability, you know?
Right. Well, again, it comes back to just reading outside of IELTS, and doing practice tests. Practice tests is not it's useful within reason, but to just read outside of IELTS and all that kind of stuff. So get a newspaper article, do it for a paragraph, see how you go, and then go back and read the article paragraph and see how it's close you were.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of it's about confidence and whether you're brave enough to guess from keywords. It's very unusual to not read things in order and to just get keywords and then make the order yourself. It's an unusual thing to do, really. It's not natural.
Yeah.
But it's a very useful skill, skimming.
Yes.
And all the students that have learnt it with me have certainly, after time, of course, they've started off very, very uncertain, but after time, if they've stuck with it, they've all been like, right, well, this is how we pass this test. I'm not saying go away now and read like this forever. This is reading for purpose. This is all we're doing.
Yeah, just your exam skills.
That's it.
Excellent advice. And then after we've done the skimming, we're going to do the scanning.
Scanning, correct. Now, scanning is all about answering direct questions, true, false, not given, all that kind of stuff. Now, scanning is not about matching words to words, and this is something that everybody seems to do. They go, oh, there's that word, and oh, here's this word, and therefore it must be the right answer because it's the same word. And often you'll find in IELTS that they have synonyms within the article to what they have in the question so that it avoids such easy matching. So that's the first sort of thing that people fall into is matching words in questions to the words in the article, and they'll often get the wrong answer that way.
Right.
So scanning for information, therefore, is all about, first of all, don't forget, you've already now done your skimming. You've already answered your first general question. While you're doing that, chances are words have come up in your mind that you have seen and you remember that they're there, even very vaguely. You're not trying very hard to do it, but you kind of go, oh, yeah, there was that kind of was about there. And your mind being very active is doing all that kind of stuff. So for example, with scanning, okay, one example of a scanning might be they've got an inventor, and what did the inventor invent? Which of these things did the inventor invent? So this is specific information. So I guess what you'd be doing is looking, first of all, an inventor is a person's name. So obviously you're looking for names. So you're scanning for information and just scanning very quickly through and finding any names that you find. When you find a name, what I would do is circle those names everywhere. Just through you go.
Yes.
So there you go. You've got all your names in your paragraph. Now you have to match up what the inventor invented. Now, scanning is when you go to a point and then you look around that point to see if the information is there that you need. So the first skill is find the point, and that can often be done by just looking for names, or for true, false, not given things, it might be just looking for a particular information, like it might ask for, say, the Eskimos and Inuits and what are these. And so all of these things usually have a proper noun in there somewhere. So you're using these sort of capital letters or certain phrases that can't be reworded to find the point in the paragraph, in the whole article. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And then circle that or underline that or whatever you do, and then in a spiral motion from that central bit, spiral motion going outwards. Again, you don't have to read it. You have to find the information. I suggest lots of different ways. It depends on who you are, what you like. You can start from the center and spiral outwards until you start seeing clumps of information that cover the point, or you can start a little bit above and read through and end up a little bit below until you find of this central word that you found and find the point it is that you're looking for. If you can't find it, move on. What you can remember is that most of the questions usually are in order from top to bottom, 1 to 10. 1 will usually start at the top and 10 will usually be at the bottom. Sometimes there might be one that's out of order, and that's just that's just luck of the draw, I guess, and you have to deal with that as it comes. But if you've missed a question, you can't find question 2, and you've hit question 3, do question 3 and then look up for question 2. Don't if it's not above question 3 and you can't find it, you've missed it, generally speaking.
All right, we go through and then work in a logical way. And occasionally we're going to expect we can expect at least one question probably to be out of order. But either way, the
Probably.
important thing is if we're not there, don't dwell on the question. Move on, keep moving, working through.
Yep.
Right.
And you've got 20 minutes to complete one article. If you've finished the best you can do and you've missed a couple within that 20 minutes, go back and look for it. Or if you want to do the whole lot and then go back again. I personally think once you've finished an article and moved on to the next one, you need to not go back again to the old one, just because you've already moved. You've had all this vocab and knowledge and everything from all the predicting and everything. It's all in your head. When you move to the next article, you have to get rid of that and start again with your new article. So I would think it's a better idea. Again, it's up to you, but I would think it's a better idea to complete one article as best as you possibly can in the time that you want to. 20 minutes, of course, per article is the standard, but if you finish one really quickly, good for you. And then move on to the next one and spend 20 minutes on that one as best you can, and then move on to the next one and spend 20 minutes on that as best you can. That's all if you want to change the times, because obviously the last ones are a bit harder sometimes. So if you want to allow for 25 minutes in the last one, only 15 minutes in the first, that's your prerogative.
I've got 2 points here. Well, one, I totally agree with what you said about spending 100% on one article, then moving forward and just having like a one direction approach and just going straight forward. Because I was reading a book about about productivity, and they said if a person is sending an email, then answering a phone call, then talking to a colleague, then goes back to the email, some people would call that multitasking, but others, this author was saying that if you're switching between these tasks, you're going to have what are called switching costs. And that's the cost, the time it takes to get your mind back into gear to doing this task. And although we're not going to be switching between, of course, looking out of the window and doing the reading exam, we're not going to be doing that. But the same applies. There will be switching costs involved from jumping from one article about maybe the Olympics and then another article about beavers in Canada, for example. So, that makes perfect sense. And my other question was that if a student's aiming, because these, like you said, the questions and the articles, they generally get harder as we progress through the test.
Correct. Yep.
And would you recommend, if a student's aiming for a band 7 and that's all they need to get, would you recommend that they possibly spend less time in the final section, knowing that it's maybe a bit too difficult, and pick up the points guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but spend more time where they're more likely to pick up points? Would you recommend that strategy?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't really. And the reason why is because, first of all, they're undermining their own ability. I think that by saying I'm not going to be able to do this is maybe a confidence thing as opposed to an actual ability thing. I think that they're probably quite capable of getting some points from that to that article. So going in with an I can attitude is a very a powerful thing to have, to say, yep, I can do this, rather than, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, or just do the best I can. I think you'll achieve more with an I can attitude. And secondly, you might miss out on 1 or 2 points in the first two articles. And even if you give yourself all the time in the world, there's no guarantee that you're going to get those 2 points. They might be extremely hard. I've done reading where I just look at the questions and go, wow, that's a toughie and that's a trick one, and how dare you do that? And there's no guarantee that you're going to get that. So if you're going to spend an extra 5 minutes to perhaps get 1 or 2 more questions, or spend that 5 minutes preparing yourself to get at least 10 out of 20 or whatever in the next one, then you're much better off going for the last one.
I see. Excellent.
That's my opinion anyway. Go for it.
Yeah. Great advice there. Right. Do you have any more points for the reading,
I just think, generally speaking, just general points are probably things that people put into play anyway, are things that make sure you look for proper nouns if they're required. They're easy to find. Acronyms, super easy to find. Those kinds of things. Tables and table completion, what a wonderful gift that is, It's just all about finding, if you get that, you're set. So lots of stuff like that. Just be clever about looking for words, but don't fall into the trap of matching word for word. That's a big trap. I think apart from that, I don't know if there's anything else at this stage.
Right.
Can you think of anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I keep reading around, and I think the students are probably in the same thing. And then you add your personal experience with other students. Some authors, they say, do lots and lots of practice tests. Other authors say, no, that's a crazy way to do it. What you need to be doing is reading. And then others say, read what you really love because you're going to pay attention. But what I was just going to say is I think you should do a mix. And also, going back to what you said, which I thought is just really valuable advice, doing what works best for you. And trying each strategy, because each person learns and operates slightly differently. So you need to do what works for you personally. And that probably means quite a few reading tests. But some students, they will do maybe 10, 20, 30 practice tests to get the skill under control. Others will just do reading practice in a sort of like IELTS manner, looking and skimming, practicing those skills, but with material that they actually enjoy. But I just want to add that you're probably best doing a little bit of each, but focusing on what works best for you.
And it depends on your time limit. It depends on lots of things. You're in control of your own situation. If you've only got a week, then of course focus on IELTS, But if you've got 6 months, then enjoy it.
Exactly.
It's sage advice, Ben.
So Anna, if the students would like to get in contact with you, could you tell us where to find you on the internet?
Oh, sure. My website is www.interactwithlanguages.com. That's me.
Right then. Okay. And there, what kind of services can they find?
At the moment, I provide online tutoring on Skype, as well as in Melbourne as well, if you're face-to-face, if you live in Melbourne, Australia. I also do essay correcting, and and not only in IELTS, I also teach TOEFL and other ESL.
And remember to leave your email for updates. Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com. And remember to leave your email for updates.